Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back. Today we are talking about sealers and fillers, what they are, when you need them, when you need both. So pay attention because most of you don't seem to know this. Should be good. Just before we get started here, I want to give a real quick shout out. I'm not going to full name the guy because I didn't ask if I could, but you know who you are. Charles H. out in Ontario. I've seen some of your work and you are doing an awesome job. Charles is a 12-year-old kid and he probably knows about as much as I do at this point, or at least his work looks like he does. So awesome work, man. Keep it up. I can't wait to see more of your stuff. So with that said, let's move on to our sealers and fillers. Now there's a lot of confusion here. So let me just start by saying they're two completely different things. Different purpose, different application, similar in a way, much like with sealers and primers, but they're definitely not the same thing. And as with any situation where you've got two different things, they've got two different applications. So let's start with fillers. And I'm not talking about automotive fillers, Bondo, things you use to fill in an entire cavity on something if you want to get rid of it. I'm talking about grain fillers. Grain fillers are for exactly what you would think they're for. They're for filling in grain. So when you've got a wood that has an open grain, it's usually good to start with a grain filler. You can fill grain in with a sealer. It just takes a very long time and kind of isn't worthwhile. Much like if you try to do it without a sealer and jump straight to, for example, your paint. Some woods are thirsty and they just keep sucking that stuff in, and you need to get that grain filled first in order to get a smooth finish and a reasonable amount of coats. So woods like sapele and mahogany, you'll notice that they have a fairly open grain to them, and if you try and spray them, they immediately start to, look rough. They get the grain texture comes through the paint. So the best thing that you can do to avoid that is fill them first. Filler is like a paste. You can thin it down, but it's not sprayable. It's something that you put on with a brush or a cloth, or I like to use a putty knife and push it into the grain, and then you sand off the excess after, fills in that grain, and then you're ready for sealer. Now, if you're working with a very open grain wood like an oak, a pine, an ash, something like that, that has those big swooping patterns that are just really deep open grain, you're gonna need a filler if you want to get that nice even finish. That doesn't mean you always have to use a filler. Sometimes it's cool to have that grain pattern coming through, and there are lots of guitars and stuff that are done like that. But if you want that beautiful gloss at the end, you're not filling that in with sealer. That's gonna take, see you when you're 80. You use that filler to fill in the grain, and then you end up with something more like a closed grain wood. For example, a maple. This stuff has no open grain. It's dense. There's nowhere for paint to soak in, This is harder than you at your first slow dance. So if you try to do a grain fill on this, you're just gonna wipe it all over the top, and then you're gonna sand it all off, and you're going to achieve nothing. Now, maple's a bit of an extreme example because in many cases you don't even need a sealer on this. The grain is so closed that there's really nothing to fill in. So you can move right to your clear coat or your paint or whatever it happens to be. But the concept still stands. There's no point in using a filler on something that's closed grain. If you use a sealer to seal up a little bit of grain, that's what you're kind of using that for. That preps your surface for your paint. And on a very, very close grain wood, you don't need either of those. Now, on kind of a final note here, different sealers are designed to work with different stuff. So for example, these big primer sealers, Inzer things, they're cool if you're gonna be brushing on a coat of latex after or something like that. They're very good for things like that. Not bad for siding on your house, that kind of thing. The Qualalac sanding sealer from Bellin, great stuff. Works obviously with their Qualalac lacquer. Very quick dry, goes on nice and thin for a sealer, which is kind of, a little bit counterintuitive, but it works well. I've tried it. Also a great product. And then of course my favorite, I think you guys have probably heard me talk about this, the vinyl sealer from Bellin. If you're looking at any of this stuff, not the Zinzer, go to Home Depot for that. But if you're looking at this stuff, you can check the Amazon link of mine in the description. If you want some, it's available there. The vinyl sealer dries super fast. It goes on relatively thick, seals up pretty much everything. It's awesome and works great under, well, hell, I've used it under lacquer. I've used it under acrylic. It's designed to go under the stringed instrument lacquer, but I also use it under polyurethane. It's my favorite sealer. So I hope that clears that up. If you've got questions, drop them in the comments section below. And as always, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Have a good one.